Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maria Mawit. I am from the Addis Ababa University, and I'm also a TWAS Young affiliate. My presentation today covers predatory journals and predatory practices. There will be a few introductory slides, publishing, and then we'll cover predatory publishing, other predatory practices, and conclude with the way forward. Scholarly publishing is a unique and ever-evolving industry with a long history. It started in the 1965 when Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society was published. By that time, some core values of scholarly publishing were already set, such as registration and archiving, and also the use of knowledge and discovery to impact society. Scholarly publishing has the purpose of exchanging scientific information between professionals, encourage scientific discussion and debate, and also archive data for future use, even for generations. And the bedrock of scholarly publishing is, of course, peer review. Peer-reviewed publishing is a solid foundation of scientific process and scholarship. Today, scholarly publishing enjoys recent advancements in technology, and many ways of innovative ways of scholarly publishing are out there, such as online publishing, archive, and broad and mega journals such as the PLUS One, F1000 Frontiers are out there. And very importantly, particularly for this presentation, the open access is the new way of scholarly publishing today. We will zoom into open access because it's particularly important, as I said, for today's presentation. There are different models of open access. We will cover the hybrid open access, the green open access, and the gold open access. The hybrid open access is an innovative way of what would usually be the subscription journals, where authors are given the option to pay an article processing charge so that their article comes out as open access and their readers enjoy free access to the articles published on these what would be subscription journals under normal circumstances. The green open access, on the other hand, is free for both authors and readers. What publishers allow in green open access is, after a certain embargo period, authors are allowed to deposit the final version of their paper, either before or after peer review, on some repositories. And as I said, it is both, the material is free for both readers and authors. The gold open access, which we will focus more in today's presentation, is the initial form of open access, and it operates on pay-to-publish modality. What happens is authors pay an article processing fee, or what we call article processing charge, and readers have free access to read and share articles published by gold open access. All publication costs are covered by the authors. Open access is very important. It has allowed many publications reach particularly researchers in low-income countries. By publishing open access, the public can access your findings for free. One can reach and influence policy. Researchers can get higher citation rates, and practitioners can apply findings published on open access, and there is more exposure for work. And of course, some granting agencies actually require or demand open access publishing, so it complies with such regulations. Having all these advantages, gold open access is unfortunately the modality which is abused by predatory publishers. So what is predatory publishing? Predatory publishing is a publishing practice which misuses the gold open access. Predatory publishing is today a lucrative business, charging up to $4,000 per article as an article processing charge. And already by 2005, the market was worth $74 million. And predatory publishing has become a serious concern of the scientific community. Publications on predatory journals with interesting titles are out there. Some even call them the academic nightmare. Predatory publishing has become a nightmare for academic publishing or the academic society. The term itself, predatory journals, was first coined by and the reason why he coined the term by saying, I call certain publishers predatory because they prey on people. They try to trick honest researchers and sometimes they are very successful. This was his reason to call them predatory. Today, predatory journals are also known by the name fake, fraudulent, very low quality, or pseudo journals. Do we have a definition for predatory publishing? One challenge in tackling these publishers or predatory journals is not having a clear definition to them. The definitions we have today and what I will present to you now are, I would say, rather definitions of what predatory publishers do or what predatory publishing does. So, for example, the European Medical Writers Association, American Medical Writers Association, and the International Society for Medical Publication Professionals define predatory publishing as, or predatory journals, as journals that subvert the peer review publication system for the sole purpose of financial gain with little evidence concern for ethical behavior as predatory. That's one definition. I also found in literature a definition saying predatory journals are spurious scientific outlets that charge fees for editorial and publishing services that they do not provide. Rather, a consensus definition was also put in one article in Nature, and it took scholars and publishers from 10 countries, 12 hours of discussion, 18 questions, and 3 rounds. And they came into a consensus definition saying predatory journals and publishers are entities that prioritize self-interest at the expense of scholarship and are characterized by false or misleading information, deviation from best editorial and publication practices, a lack of transparency, and or the use of aggressive and indiscriminate solicitation practices. So these are the definitions we have for predatory publishing. And let's look into what they actually do. These predatory publishers and predatory journals, we may interchangeably say predatory publishing, predatory journals, but what do they do? What is exactly the malpractice? First and foremost, they aggressively solicit authors by emails to become authors, editors, board members. And even they can contact people without the right credentials. For example, as a pharmacist, I may get an email from a journal claiming to be publishing on mechanical engineering, for example. So they are aggressive in soliciting authors, editors, and board members. They send emails, waves and waves of emails. And there is no peer review or pseudo peer review with vague comments such as, I enjoyed reading your article. Or authors may get feedback saying, reviewers like your paper and consider it acceptable for publication. There is no check on plagiarism or ethical clearance. And they are characterized by using ambitious titles saying international, global, world, European, American. And at times, names of journals of so and so. There is a very rapid publication period in predatory journals. This is why sometimes people fall prey for them. And period takes probably only hours, and days after manuscript submission, and of course, credit card information is provided. So if we summarize it in this scheme, which I have adopted from Richtig et al., if you look at on the left top, there is a scientist, and no payment is necessary. No payment is necessary to publish his or her work on subscription-based journals. That's the top leftmost scheme, if you follow it. And articles published in subscription-based journals will receive good scientific quality peer review and high quality publishing, and they will reach readership or readers with good scientific quality. In the open access model, which is, if you look in the middle, authors will pay an article processing charge, and they will receive a good scientific high quality peer review, and the articles published will reach the readers in good scientific quality level, and the readers do not need to pay anything for reading or sharing those articles. In the bottom scheme, again, authors will pay an article processing fee to a predatory journal, and in return what they get is actually insufficient peer review and low quality publishing. And these articles published in such predatory journals will reach the readers with very low or unknown scientific quality, even though the readers don't pay for it. So this diagram in a good way summarizes what predatory journals do. So by doing this, what is the exact damage? What is the real damage this predatory publishing imposes on science? Of course, predatory journals or predatory publishing wastes resources, they sow confusion, and they spread fake science. But the real damage actually stands in that they imperil the integrity and credibility of research as a whole. So, by spreading fake science, by sowing confusion, by producing low quality scientific publication, they imperil the integrity and the credibility of research as a whole. And by shaking the peer review process, they impose this damage. If predatory publishing is this much threatening, why do the academics publish in predatory journals? Because, as we said, the predatory publishing industry is still flourishing. The first reason is, of course, academic promotion is usually based on the number rather than quality of publications. Many research institutes and universities use this point as a criterion to promote their faculty. And then researchers, particularly early career researchers, fall as innocent prey to these publishers. And the pressure of publishing forces researchers, even the seasoned ones, not only early career ones, to look ways of artificially boosting their publication records. In this case, these researchers take a calculated risk to publish on predatory journals. So academics publish in them, first because maybe because they fall as an innocent prey, or because they take a calculated risk to publish on a predatory journal, get rapid publication, and get promoted. In either of the cases though, predatory publishing is not acceptable, and we should avoid predatory journals and predatory publishing as much as we can. How do we avoid predatory publication or predatory journals? Unfortunately, there is no silver bullet to differentiate between predatory journals and legitimate ones. And sometimes it's even difficult to distinguish between a predatory journal and a legitimate journal which is just starting up or which is under-financed or under-resourced. However, we are not out of help. There are suggested means and there are ways to avoid predatory publishers. By choosing the right journals to publish our work, we can avoid predatory publishers. There are databases and websites that provide information on predatory and legitimate publications. And we can also look into details, important details in journals to detect predatory activity. Let's see each point in detail. So, choosing the right journal as a means to avoid predatory publishing. Of course, there are hundreds and hundreds of titles out there, and it can be a daunting task to choose the right journal to publish your work. And the task becomes even more so challenging for early career scientists and scientists in developing countries. I like what Memon has coined: learn first, publish later. So there is no hurry to publish. Hurry to publish and end up in a predatory journal. So it's good to take time and learn first and then publish later. What do we need to learn? The points we need to consider in choosing the right journal. The first thing is, of course, asking, what do we wish from a publication? I think most people would agree with the wish list I have pointed out here, but within the ethical framework of publication, other points could be added. But in general, most of us would like to have a good peer-reviewed paper published in a good quality journal with good digital infrastructure, having a permanent record of our work, and giving us wide readership, and prestige and indexing, of course, are also other points. But remember, to get these, we don't have to pay. This can be obtained for free by following the traditional subscription journals scheme. So I can send my work to a subscription journal for free and get good peer review and get my paper published in a good journal with high indexing and enjoy wide readership. But whether open access published or published in a subscription journal, there are important points or good points to consider as well in choosing the right journal. So, what is your area of specialization? For sure, one wants to publish in a journal that focuses on his or her area of specialization. And whom do we want to reach? Who is our audience? Or who is your audience in your work that is ready to be published? Do you want to reach a local policymaker maybe? Or do you want to reach a regional group of scientists? Or do you want it to be more global? Knowing your audience for sure would help you one step to choose the right journal for your work. And do you really need to publish open access? Of course, as I pointed out earlier, some research funders require open access publishing. And a good point is where you read or where you read good articles, and those journals where most of your references came from are journals you probably wish to publish on. So which journals do you often read? And which journals do you often cite actually? And which journals do your peers publish on? You can also look around. And do you see any familiar names on the journal's editorial board after selecting list of titles, for example? examine the editorial board, and do you recognize anyone who's an authority in your field in the editorial board? Or do you see any familiar names in the journal's table of contents? Do people whom you recognize as good scientists in your area publish in these journals? So these could be points which can help you choose the right journal so that you do not end up in a predatory journal. The second point is consulting databases and or websites as a means to avoid predatory publishing. There are the blacklists and the whitelists, and there are also some other websites which are really helpful to decide whether a journal is predatory or not. So the blacklists and the whitelists. The blacklists are those databases which alert authors of potential predatory publishing, meaning they have list of publishers and journals which are potentially predatory. The first popular, I would rather say, blacklist was Bell's list. Jeffrey Bell, who coined the term predatory, created Bell's list of potential predatory journals and publishers in 2010. But he has to stop, or his list needed to be stopped in 2017. Now an anonymous activist updates the list continuously, but on a different site. And according to some criteria, about 5 criteria set by Bell, he classifies journals, standalone journals, predatory publishers in his list of potential predatory journals and publishers. And the list was for free. Another blacklist is Cabell's Scholarly Analytics Blacklist. It's a company of scholars and scholars updating this list, but Cabell's Scholarly Analytics is not a free website. You have to pay to get service from Cabell's list. On the other hand, we have whitelists which follow the reverse approach, in that they provide list of indexed and potentially legitimate journals. And again, Cabell has a whitelist, just as they have a blacklist. Again, it is a paid service. You cannot get free service from Cabell's website. Databases like the Directory of Open Access Journals provide invaluable service in identifying if a journal is predatory or a publisher is predatory. On DOAJ, you can search for titles. You can paste your title of a journal or the ISSN number of a journal, and then you can find out if it is actually indexed on the Directory of Open Access Journals. Because most predatory journals claim that they are indexed in DOAJ. DOAJ gives the DOAJ seal, and their own website, only their own website can confirm if an open access journal is indexed or not in DOAJ. Another thing which predatory journals and predatory publishers claim is high impact factor and some false impact factor. The Clarivate Analytics of Web of Science is another database where you can check for the legitimacy of impact factor. Other databases and websites such as the PubMed can also be used as whitelists to see if a journal is indexed in them or not. So these are checklists. The whitelist and the blacklist are checklists. Other websites and databases also provide decision trees, meaning by asking a certain number of questions, they will help researchers decide on a given title of journal or not. One campaign on this is the Think, Check, Submit campaign, which was initiated by the Global Association of Editors and Publishers, COP, and the Open Access Scholarly Publishers Association. So in the Think, Check, Submit, you get help to avoid predatory publishing. The think, check, submit also helps in non-Anglo, in the non-English speaking cases as well. Another platform where you can find a good journal or a guide on where to publish is the journalguide.com, a digital platform developed by software specialists, researchers, and publishers to match English titles and abstracts with trusted journals. Well, having these databases on your side and considering the points we said you have to consider in choosing the right publisher or journal, there is another trick to avoid these predatory publishers or predatory journals. One is, of course, to examine invitation emails carefully. So checking details as a means of avoiding predatory journals, because of course the devil is in the details. You can examine the invitation emails which you get carefully. The language they use is usually flattering. There is a lot of grammatical and spelling error, of course human error being acceptable, and the invite is probably to completely an unrelated field. And in such cases, what you have to do is simply junk or delete the emails. You don't need to engage with them. Interesting things could pop up if you check the editor-in-chief or the editorial team. In some instances, the owner, the publisher, and the editor-in-chief of a journal could be one and the same person. And institutional affiliations are usually missing for the editor-in-chief and some listed editorial team members. And if it's listed, you have to check if it's really genuine or legitimate. The same thing in the editorial team. Check the editorial team. Is there anyone whom you may recognize in the editorial team? Anyone from your field? Anyone recognizable from your area of specialization? Are the institutional affiliations given in the editorial team correct and legitimate? This you can check. In checking the details, another important step you can take is to carefully read the about and the aims and scope page of the journal. These journals usually write nonsense on these pages with unclear and vague statements, and they provide a very wide, unfocused scope. As the illustration here shows, they can claim to be international journal of nearly everything. And they also copy plagiarized statements from legitimate journals and simply paste them in their pages. So you can check for these details in the About and Aims scope page of the journals. Another important detail would be to double check the indexing and the impact claimed by these journals. For example, the International Journal of Nearly Everything here claims to have impact factor of 8. Check if that's true on the Web of Science. And also, as they claim to be indexed in many databases, you need to go to those databases to confirm the information is true. Also check the copyright policy, what happens after you pay your money, who owns the copyright. All these have to be clearly stated, and you have to be comfortable in that. You may end up in a very interesting finding if you check the address listed on the publisher's address. There are people who have encountered such experiences. For example, a journal claimed its physical address to be on a parking field in Spain. So check the address, copy the address, and check it on Google Maps, and you can find out what is actually at that address. So this is about predatory publishing. To look on the other predatory practices, the invitation to sign the editorial board of a predatory journal, because having your name listed there probably attracts other authors, and also predatory conferences. These two practices are also there, exercised as predatory, though they are not given attention as much as predatory publishing. Actually, the editorial board membership is part of the publishing. So, invitation to serve in an editorial board comes from these predatory publishers in the form of constant emails, non-stopping emails, because they are constantly looking for editorial board members, especially those with high reputations. And they aggressively send out invitation emails to researchers, even in an unrelated field to the journal. And once you send your CV and they have your name listed as an editorial board member, you may never hear from them again. So, should you accept the invite? No. Avoid being listed in predatory journals' editorial board as much as you can. So, what are the points you should consider before replying yes to the invite? The first thing is, have you published in the journal? Do you have any experience on that journal's activity? Also, examine the existing board members listed. Any familiar names there? Contact them. Ask them what their experience is working with that journal. And very, very importantly, always be aware of the email overload. And remember that prestigious or legitimate journals actually do not send invitation emails to researchers to serve as board members. It actually works the other way around, where the researchers send emails to these publishers requesting to serve as a board member. The predatory conferences are another form of predatory practice, and they are the newest form of such practices. These predatory conferences are very poor quality meetings which operate on the pay-to-play model, and they focus merely on the financial gain and with no scientific value. And they, of course, have a lot in common with predatory publishing. They mimic names of legitimate conferences, and they send unsolicited waves of emails with flattering language, for example, saying, "We invite your gracious presence on the international conference of so-and-so." Many researchers face problems once after they travel, for example, to the conference site. There is no conference. Usually destinations are highly touristic, luxurious hotels listed, and when the researchers, usually young early career researchers, reach there, there is no accommodation, no reservation of place, and so on. But again, the more serious damage is, again, remember, on the very core values of science and research. So, to not to become a victim to predatory conferences, you can identify them by character. Typical, again, the email invites, the waves of the email invites, with highly mimicking legitimate names of legitimate conferences. And again, there is a very wide, unfocused theme, often unreflective of the title of the conference. And acceptance of your abstract once you submit it comes in few hours, and you are requested to pay the participation fee. But then again, they will give you participation option either virtually or present your paper virtually, and then you will get certificate of participation. You probably find no familiar name in the organizers, committee members, or keynote speakers list. And the payments, the fees, the participation fees are mandatory, usually high, non-refundable, and the accounts provided are usually personal bank accounts. So be careful and beware of such conferences, and you can identify them by character. The same initiative of Think, Check, Submit also have the Think, Check, Attend campaign, which you can consult so that you don't fall prey to predatory conferences. In conclusion, predatory practices are an alarming global threat. They sow confusion, they spread fake science, and pose danger to research, the very core values of research. The promotion and award policies of institutes are pushing researchers to publish more, hence making them fall prey to predatory practices, or making them take a calculated risk to publish a number of articles on predatory journals. And even though it's challenging to differentiate between a predatory journal and a predatory conference and legitimate ones, there are still ways to identify predator activity and keep away. The way forward. Predatory practices will not disappear. They will be here. They will be here, and even in more deceptive ways. Particularly as long as institutes continue number of publications as a means to measure the research productivity of their faculty. And this calls for the need for innovatively design other indicators of evaluating research productivity. For example, with all its limitations, the H-index is one such indicator, but more indicators with less limitations need to be designed, so that researchers do not solely depend on the number of articles they accumulate. And of course, global collaboration and support are required against tackling predatory practices. Stakeholders such as research institutes, universities, professional societies, publishers, funders need to take an active role in creating awareness, particularly to their young early career scientists, and tackling predatory practices. And researchers, when they come across predatory practices, they should be beware of them, they should avoid them, and they should report them to their colleagues and respective institutes so that others do not fall prey to these predatory practices. With that, I wrap up my presentation. These are the references I used for preparing this presentation, and I would like to acknowledge particularly two people: Max Pauli of TWAS, the program coordinator at the World Academy of Sciences, and Andy Nobbs of AuthorAid. Acknowledgement is also due to my home university, Addis Ababa University, and Uppsala University, International Science Program, ISP. They fund our research group here. And my network of young affiliates, the TIAN in TWAS. So TIAN and TWAS are also acknowledged. With that, I thank you, and I invite you to come and look Ethiopia, the land of origins. Many greetings from Ethiopia. Thank you.